Hey everyone, welcome back to D Squared Stories, an audio fiction podcast bringing you short serialized weekly stories. We are moving on to Chapter 4 of Fun Facts and Psychic Possession Attacks today. Without any further ado, let's get into a quick recap and then get started. Last time, Sasha, also known as Tango Foxtrot, revealed herself to me and we went on our first date together. Just like anyone's ideal first date, it started with me possessing a parking garage attendant to confirm that I could return to my body regardless of where it was. Then, as things heated up, I took over her prom date to confirm that so long as I knew what someone's face looked like at one point in their life, I can still possess them. Then we had a bit of tension, as she wanted me to use my powers to meddle in the court case of Godfrey, also known as Alpha Omega. We said and did some things that I think we both regretted a little. I possessed her little brother, she sent my address to Alpha Omega, and now I had no other option but to kill him if I wanted to keep my secret safe. Chapter 4. A meeting with a lawyer, followed by an all-out brawl. Don't even think of trying to possess me. There's no way to unsend the message, Sasha said. I stood, aggravatingly tapping the fingers of my possessed unwitting bystander as his craving for a cigarette only got worse and worse. I had half a mind to lash out on her, just go scorched earth and take a turn in her body, ruining her life before I went on the run forever from these alpha male posers. I got a grip on myself, though. This was still salvageable, even if she had no idea. I did not have to kill Alpha Omega or Godfrey or whatever his name was. I just had to get his phone and delete those messages. Fine. Here I go. I'll call you when I get in, I said, voice of my possession victim still ravaged by his cigarette addiction. I walked off and into the courthouse. I walked through security and made my way to the main chamber. I called Sasha. Okay, what now? I asked. If you didn't make us late with the stunt you pulled, you still should be able to see the end of the bail hearing. I bit my tongue very hard. Rather, this poor guy whose body I was in control of, whose only sin was waiting for the bus, bit his tongue very hard. She was getting beyond frustrating. My stunt. She wanted me to kill someone for her extrajudicially and had the nerve to act like I was the unreasonable one for resisting. Granted, I started resisting well before I knew she wanted to do that, but either way. It should be the second door on the left. I eyed a courtroom that matched the location description. All right, I see it, I said. I'm going to have to put away the phone to get in there. Yeah, I know, she said. I'm going to trust you to save your own rear now. Just get a look at his face. That's all you need. We can hammer out the rest later. Man, I really cannot stand taking orders from her. I truly yearn for the moments a half hour ago when she was at least putting on the veneer of making this more of a partnership. I hung up the phone and went into the courtroom. To my surprise, it looked as if proceedings had not even begun. I eyed Godfrey Smith in the defendant's stand, looking completely nervous as the judge seemed to be impatiently tapping his fingers. I stood in the doorway confused before nearly being knocked over as the doors swung open again and a tall man pushed me aside. Sorry, so sorry, Your Honor. I'm here, a familiar voice said. I eyed the tall black man with silvery hair as he rushed to take Godfrey's side. It took me a moment, but this was Lawrence Rodney, the guy who was pushing elk powder as an investment opportunity in the financial advisor's office. That makes no sense. He's Godfrey's lawyer? On second thought, I remember Micah saying something about it being good that I saw his face. They had lined up their little tour de force of fun facts in such a way that I would at least have seen his face on the off chance that I could not see Godfrey's. They may be real thorns in my side, but damn, those finds were pretty crafty. I would have to figure out all the work that went into knowing who was going to be where. Lawrence wasted no time getting his papers ready. Mr. Rodney, is the defense finally prepared? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, he said. He shrugged off the judge's aggressive tone like it was nothing. Your Honor, I apologize for my lateness, but this whole hearing is a bit of a sham. The prosecution is requesting my client be held without bail and his assets remain frozen. My client has been fighting for the past 5 years for custody of his 2 children. He is not about to leave the country after this tragic situation. We will fight and prove his innocence. Divorced dad with 2 kids and a dead mom. This must be why this case hit so close to home for Sasha, assuming anything she told me about her personal life was true. Your Honor, the prosecution countered. The defendant is a flight risk and has financial transactions that are still being investigated. If allowed to run free, he will either cover his tracks or be on a plane to the Caribbean tomorrow. Sounds nice. I should see if anyone's live streaming from the Caribbean later and take a little mental day trip there, after I figure out this whole murder thing. The judge seemed to mull over the arguments for only a brief amount of time before handing down a judgment. I find the defense credible that Mr. Smith has no intention of leaving the country. Bail will be set at $30,000, but Mr. Smith's assets will remain frozen. Even from the back of the courtroom, I could see Lawrence's big white grin flash as he clenched his fist in private celebration. Despite not getting everything he wanted, he seemed perfectly content with the outcome. He and his client began walking out of the courtroom, shortly after it adjourned for them. There was a group of people waiting for this overdue session to come to a close. I followed them from a distance. I pulled out my unnamed victim's phone and gave Sasha a ring. Hey, I saw Godfrey. He's going to be out on bail. Lawrence is here too, I said. Okay, good job. You can get back into your body and we can tail them from here until you have a good chance to take him out. No can do, TF. I got line of sight up to him right here. I'm taking no chances. What? What are you talking about? You can't just go up to him and stab him. Duh, but there's nothing stopping me from taking over his mind. I'll catch you in a bit. Not giving her any opportunity to argue with me, I sat down on a bench and launched a psychic possession attack. I stumbled a bit, now fully in Godfrey's body, mid-stride. Lawrence seemed to pay it no mind. We walked out of the door of the courtroom. Lawrence strode up to his car and pulled out a tinfoil-wrapped item, oddly hoagie-shaped. Here you go, your usual, he said as he handed it to me. My eyes widened as he handed me the hoagie. This was it. I had a long-term plan to figure out myself if Godfrey was guilty so I could relay that info to Sasha, but I never thought I would be able to get it this early. I slowly unwrapped the sandwich, revealing the Goose Smart logo. It was all right here. I could tell, just from anyone's Goose Smart order, just about everything about them. This would tell me beyond a shadow of a doubt whether this was a man really capable of murdering the mother of his children. I used his eyes to scan down the ingredients list. Meatball. That was a good start. Many of my good friends favor a meatball hoagie. It seemed almost certain from here that Godfrey was an honorable man. That is what I thought, at least, until I saw lettuce. What the hell? Who puts lettuce on a meatball hoagie? Next, onions. Raw. Good Lord, this man was sick to the core. Sasha was right. He did not deserve to live. My face clearly failed to hide my emotions, because Lawrence commented. Oh, shoot, he said. No, you like caramelized onions, don't you? I always forget that. I would not call it redemption. The lettuce was nearly unforgivable, but the caramelized onions instead of the raw ones meant that just like at his upcoming trial, the jury was out. I could not prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was guilty of a crime. Not a crime against humans, anyway. Just possibly against sandwiches. It's no problem, I said. You cut it really close there. The judge was about to lose it. I was aware of Alpha Omega's general demeanor from my limited research into Colin. I was hoping his mannerisms were similar to that in his real life. I had a bit of a rough time with that investor, he said. His bean counter almost talked him out of the deal, but I managed to secure $50,000. $50,000? Invested in elk powder? Good grief, Garrett, you are the worst financial advisor in the history of financial advisors. Lawrence, on the other hand, seems like he could sell sand in the desert. I need to be careful with this smooth operator. One slip and he might realize something was off. He seems to be more than a common defense attorney. His peddling of elk powder as an investment opportunity makes me think this mysterious figure is a hidden but central piece to this toxic masculinity industry. I needed to find out more. That's enough to cover my bail and more, I said. Yeah, you religious meathead. I told you that this was what it was all about, he said. I never would have guessed transferring those assets into your accounts would have backfired on us like this. The espionage was working. It seemed safe to assume that Godfrey was not the sharpest tool in the shed, and Lawrence seemed to know this. How far could I push it, though? You're quiet. This is unlike you, he said sternly. What's on your mind? Crap. I was acting out of character. Godfrey was someone who it seems would never shut up. The whole mind controller thing is really freaking me out, I said. Lawrence scanned my eyes intently. This may have been a bad move. I got ready to drag my thumbs to my ears if anything were to go wrong. Godfrey, he said. Remind me, what is your favorite Bible verse again? This was make or break. I hardly hesitated before responding. Timothy 2:12. Lawrence's eyes softened. You had me worried for a moment. Stop behaving so strangely. If you know, you know. I would also like to say I don't endorse everything in my religion's holy texts, and historical and cultural context matters when understanding religious teachings. You know, I think I saw our friend Tango Foxtrot earlier. It was just for a spell, but I believe they were in control of someone I was talking to. Oh shoot, he was right. I had control of Garrett and left. Having his thumbs in his ears and short memory spell would mean nothing to any normal person, so I did not think it was a big deal, but I had not known at the time. Wait, but Tango Foxtrot? Right, Sasha had tricked them into believing she could also do psychic possession attacks. I wonder why he assumed it was TF and not me. It was a bit of a shock to me, encountering him on an unrelated endeavor, Lawrence continued. I was able to make the most of it. Colin and the others just got in from their flights and are converging on his location right now. I jerked Godfrey's head to the side to look where Sasha's car was still parked right outside the courthouse. I did not see anyone around, but if he was right, I had to warn her. I thought all of this when I suddenly felt my arm get twisted behind my back with incredible force. So that must be where your body is, Tango Foxtrot, Lawrence said. Your little shenanigans are finally coming to a close. I looked on in horror as he pulled a phone from his pocket and quickly dialed a number. I tried yanking against him, but Godfrey's body was no match for his massive muscles as he held his body pinned down to the car, with me trapped in it. Colin, I have Tango Foxtrot trapped in my grip. Close in on the blue sedan. That's where her real body is. My mind was racing at a mile per minute, but a few things became increasingly clear to me. 1, they knew Sasha's identity with certainty. 2nd, they managed to track her down to this city. 3rd, they had no idea that she and I were separate entities. Presumably, they thought she was me attempting to infiltrate their ranks and screw with them, which does sound like something I would do, to be fair. Either way, I had to stop them. Colin, stop! Tango Foxtrot got control of Lawrence's mind. You're being led into a trap, I shouted. Lawrence laughed. Colin, look over at me. My eye patch is still on. The mind controller has no way of knowing my face to take control. Is that so, you prick? I bent Godfrey's head to lean down to where his arm was being pushed and narrowly got his thumb into his ear. I pulled my arm to get the other one in. Fun fact number 19. I only need to be able to correctly imagine the face of my target to possess them. It may help to see it, but if I can see one of their eyes, I can just imagine what the other one looks like. I waited for a brief moment to get into Lawrence's body. Instead, I was met with the sound of his laughter. Ha ha ha! Trying to get inside my head, he asked. You don't have the vaguest clue what's under this eye patch. Fun fact number 20. I have no idea what is going on right now and why that did not work. I have no idea what's under this eye patch. A scar should not matter, since just like with Garrett, as long as I imagine what his face once looked like, I should be able to get back in. Heck, he could even have the eyeball fully removed for all that matters. Unless, maybe the injury occurred to him in childhood, so I was imagining a face that never existed? Darn it, this was too much to figure out right now. He pushed me down onto the ground. Go ahead. Go back into your own body now, he said. You can't take control of everyone who's coming to get you. I looked over to see Sasha's car, surrounded by goons, concealing weapons on each of their person. I saw her turn the car on, but one got close to the window real threateningly. I released my psychic possession attack to return to my body next to her. I'm back, I said. She was rattled in the seat next to me. What's going on? She asked. They found you, and they think you're me. But don't worry, I can get us out of this. How? She asked. I scanned to see the faces of everyone surrounding the car. They all looked on with smug grins as I could see Colin himself approaching the car, wanting to be the one to make the victory speech. Luckily for me, even under Lawrence's guidance, they still were overconfident fools. With this, I said, psychic possession flashbang attack. Fun fact number 21. Psychic possession flashbang attack was a special move that I handcrafted to use in a situation where my life is in danger from multiple enemies. It allows me to incapacitate multiple people with a chain of psychic possession attacks. I plugged my thumbs into my ears. I possessed Colin first. As soon as I had a hold of him, I jumped sideways into the air and plugged his thumb into his ears, leaving his body to crash into the ground when his consciousness returned. From Colin's body, I went straight into another one of his goons and did the same thing. I rinsed and repeated for the next assailant, and the next one, and the next one, until all of them were either concussed or at least bruised up, and I was back safe in my body. Take that, you creeps. Sasha looked a bit of shocked and relieved to see that everyone had been taken out. She quickly put the car into drive and drove away from the courthouse. I looked on in the parking lot as Lawrence approached and seemed to just smile at the car as it drove by, without any attempt to pursue. It was unnerving to me to see him so calm after being so thoroughly defeated. Unless... Damn it. I quickly plugged my thumbs into my ears, but the possession failed. "Sasha, Micah's not in his room anymore," I said. "What?" she asked. "I tried to do a psychic possession attack to see if he was all right, but he's not in there." She looked panicked, and then she turned to me with a grimace. "This is a trick. You're trying to delete the info." We are so far past that it's crazy. They've seen me. It won't take them long to figure out who I am. If you don't trust me, then just don't say where he is, but at least check on him. Sasha nervously pulled her phone to her at a stoplight and put her brother on speaker in the car. The phone rang once. It rang a second time. The tension in the air was palpable as it rang for a third time. I think I emptied everything that my lungs had in them when on the fourth it finally picked up. Micah, are you all right?" Sasha asked. There was a silence on the line. "So, this is what Tango Foxtrot sounds like," a voice said. It took me a bit, but that was undeniably the voice of Tommy Fracasso. Ugh, really pulling at your memory, huh? He was in the second chapter. I possessed him and found out he likes getting you-know-what by his girlfriend, and then bailed. Listen, no kink-shaming here, but that's just the most memorable thing about him. "You let my brother go," Sasha said, on the verge of tears. "I don't think I will. He's our hostage now. If you want him back safely, you're going to do exactly what we say with those mind control powers of yours." I hit mute on Sasha's phone. "Keep him talking. He's a moron, and I know what he looks like. If we can just get him to give up his location, he's a sitting duck. He can't be far from your apartment if he left it at all." She nodded and unmuted. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any mind control powers." He responded. "And is that why on your brother's computer here, you're logged in on this chaos account as Tango Foxtrot, self-professed mind controller?" Sasha's eyebrows raised. I looked at her as if to say I told her so, because I did. Without any further fanfare, I simply performed my psychic possession attack and found myself in control of Tommy. Unfortunately, I also found myself handcuffed. I looked around to see a handful of goons laughing at me. Well, worked just like Lawrence said it would," one said. "Try getting yourself out of that body without your thumbs," another said. I yanked Tommy's arms, but there was no way to get my thumbs to my ears. I shrugged. "Tell me where the guy you took is, or I'll break this body so badly Tommy might never walk again." I was immediately apprehended by two of the goons who restrained me, so I could do no harm to Tommy's body while in control of it. Luckily for me, this gave me a good look at their ugly faces. It was time for another one of my signature moves. Thumbless Psychic Possession Release. Fun fact number 22. In preparation for a situation just like this, where I could not bring my thumbs to my ears, I developed a special move called Thumbless Psychic Possession Release that would let me end a psychic possession attack using the other condition. I made Tommy hold his breath. The goons restraining me seemed blissfully unaware of what was going on, until Tommy's face started to change colors. By then they started freaking out, attempting to punch me in the gut in an attempt to get me to gasp air. It was too late, though. I felt myself getting lightheaded, and soon before I knew it, I was back in my own body, gasping for air. "What happened?" Sasha asked. "It sounded like you got trapped." "No, all a part of my plan. I'm going back in." Thumbs back in ears, yada yada. Now I was in control of the individual we will call Henchman Number 1. The burly man known to us as Henchman Number 2 looked on in horror as I made Henchman Number 1 hold a knife to his throat. "You can be next," I said. "Or we can just make life easy and you can tell me where Micah is." One of them had a radio in their back pocket. Now, let's not be rash." Lawrence's voice came through on the other side. "Let me go," Micah cried out. "Darn you." "I think we need to put this situation on ice," Lawrence said. "No one needs to get hurt here. Last thing we need is the police getting involved. Let's arrange a little meetup, somewhere public, so that we can put a stop to this. We'll make a trade. This boy for the real mind controller, the young man. I'll let you set the location. We'll just need to confirm that you come in cuffs, so there's no funny business." I stopped and thought about the best plan. The most rational thing to do was to return to my body, jump out of Sasha's car, and start a new life in the middle of nowhere. If they did get a hold of my body, there was nothing stopping them from reneging on the deal and just holding Sasha, Micah, and myself hostage and as collateral if I failed to do their will. I was surrounded by some of the nastiest, most petulant men imaginable, and if they had access to my power, there was no doubt they would use it for heinous things. The most rational thing to do was was to stop that at all costs. I sighed. The zoo, I said. I unfortunately was not the most rational person. I was fueled by two things. One, an arrogant pride that refused to leave the situation until I had pummeled these losers into the ground. Second, was that I wanted to prove Sasha wrong as well. I wanted to show her that I did care about people who needed help. Anything else we should know? What time? I asked. We can meet around noontime. Where should we meet? The zoo is a big place, after all. We can meet by the gorillas. You guys will fit right in, I said. On Lawrence's end, I heard the unmistakable sound of church bells from across the courthouse. Oh, and by the way, I said. I plugged my thumbs into my ears. I briefly showed up behind Lawrence in the body of Godfrey. If you get a hostage, so do we. Lawrence seemed to glare at me. For once, I had done something that he had not anticipated. Before he got wise to Godfrey's possession, he let it slip that he had put assets in Godfrey's name for some reason. They were still frozen, but if something were to happen to him, it would be unlikely that Lawrence would have any way to reclaim them. Lawrence saw all these goons as pawns in a game, but Godfrey was a piece he could no longer afford to lose. So be it. See you tomorrow, he said. He walked off so nonchalantly. I had half a mind to charge him and use all of Godfrey's strength to try to rip that eye patch right off so I could confidently take the upper hand in this situation at long last. However, I knew that was futile. I called Sasha on the phone. Her number still somehow memorized in spite of everything that happened. Hey, where are you? What is going on? She asked. I grabbed myself a hostage and made some plans to do a prisoner swap tomorrow at the zoo. In the meantime, I need a wheelchair, duct tape, a sleeping bag, and a lot of trash. I'll get those. Protect my body for me, and do your best to find a photo of Lawrence prior to that eye patch. We'll meet at the library, okay? Okay, Sasha said, her voice trembling. I'm going to get the two of you out of this. I hung up the phone. I went to collect all the items that I needed for this hopefully final confrontation with the alpha dorks. My plan was incredibly risky and unorthodox, but it had to be this way. In my trolling of the streamers themselves, I had always acted in such a rational and methodical way because I assumed they would be too stupid to figure me out. Now that Lawrence was tied into the equation, I had to do the opposite. I had to come up with a plan that was so convoluted that no normal person would ever think to do it. The plan had to be one that could not only fail, but was actually more likely to fail than not. Those were the only outcomes that Lawrence would never be able to anticipate. After collecting all the items I needed, I met up with Sasha at the library. She looked at me with a bit of disdain as I approached, but more for the person whose skin I was wearing than me. At least I hoped that was the case. All right, I think I have everything I need, I said. Any luck on Lawrence? She shook her head. As far as I can tell, the injury must have occurred in childhood. Have you tried imagining him without his eye? Maybe it's fully gone. I did early on. It made no difference. His eye is there, but for some reason when I imagine him with two of those brown eyes, nothing seems to work. She looked deep in thought and then turned her attention back to Godfrey. Maybe he's seen it. How about we try torturing it out of him? She stared at Godfrey with a pure malice, the kind that would have probably otherwise been reserved for her own mother's killer if she could ever find him. Instead, this alleged mother killer was good enough for her in the meantime. That's probably not a great idea. We should try to avoid making a scene as much as possible. She glared at me. This is for your brother, not me. Last thing we need is for us to not make the meeting and Lawrence reacts who knows how. This line of logic seemed to at least put her bubbling resentment below the surface. She then pulled out her phone and seemed to start scrolling through to show me something. I did manage to find this, though. It's fairly interesting. Page through it. It was an article from a reputable newspaper. It was titled, Elk Powder and Its Potential Side Effects, How a Niche Protein Powder Escaped Regulation, and the Harm It Can Do. Reading through it, it explains how due to the trace amounts of any and all nutritional value or conventional food ingredients, that elk powder is able to be sold without any restriction or governance from any traditional food and drug regulatory bodies. It explains this carefully crafted formula was the handiwork of former top pharmaceutical lawyer Lawrence Rodney, who is quoted in the story. My work in pharmaceuticals taught me one thing, which is that the government only exists to regulate the freedoms of men who want to put natural products into their bodies. They would prefer we feminize our bodies with all these processed ingredients and additives to be more submissive to their control. It was tough not to roll Godfrey's eyes for him. Continuing on, it explained how in addition to likely not containing any elk to avoid the regulation, that elk powder was more of a pyramid scheme than a business. Because of course it was. They had no real way to buy elk powder. Instead, people invested in the product and received dividends in powder. The price of the powder was based on the demand, so to increase your market share and get more money, you had to get others to buy in. We've de-digitalized the blockchain and basically made a cryptocurrency that is backed by the fact that it is also the best protein powder adjacent product on the market, Lawrence said. That was my breaking point, and I had to return the phone to Sasha. How are there so many morons on this planet? I asked. You missed the last part, she said. Someone was supposed to provide a sample of the elk powder to test it, but they never ended up doing it. I assume that since then there's been no follow-up. Why can't they just get a thing of it for themselves? Because part of the terms of the investment says you can't facilitate the testing of the powder or violate your NDA. It makes me wonder who the squeaky wheel almost was on their operation. I stood in stunned silence for a moment. Sasha looked up at me, a bit of worry in her expression. What's going on? Get my body ready. We need to tie him up real quick. We got the duct tape ready, and I sat Godfrey's body down in the wheelchair. We taped up his legs and then his mouth, and prepped the tape to strap him down by his arms as soon as I released my control. I looked at Sasha. She nodded, and then I put my thumbs into my ears. As soon as I felt myself in control of my own body, I rushed over to her, and we finished strapping down his arms before he could realize what was happening to him. He struggled and squirmed beneath his bindings, but they were done well, and he was held still. Hey, buddy, it's all right here. You're safe. Don't lie to him. I might take a few cracks at him, she said. Sasha raised her arm. I grabbed it to stop her. She looked at me with pure rage. I stared deeply into her eyes, as if to silently ask her just to stop for a minute. She seemed to understand this nonverbal cue and let her arms down at her side. Godfrey, you're accused of a pretty terrible crime, as I'm sure you know, I said. Now, are you the man who killed your wife? He shook his head no. Do you know the man who killed your wife? He paused. He hesitated for a moment before shaking his head again. Sasha saw this hesitation too, and her eyes perked up. Now, Godfrey, I don't think that's true, I said. I would hate for you to lie to me. Would you mind telling me if this man killed your wife? I showed him a photo of Lawrence. For a moment, he panicked, violently shaking his head and desperate to keep his secret, but in this, unwittingly giving it away. Sasha turned to me. How did you know? She asked. It's a lot to explain. None of these guys involved with Colin have had any control in this situation to date. Lawrence has been the one pulling the strings. I think I have a plan to stop him, but I'll need your full cooperation. Everything I say is going to sound completely insane, but I need you to go along with it. She looked unsure of this. I guess, whatever your plan is, I'm with you. Fun fact number 23. Tomorrow, I will be able to launch a psychic possession attack on Lawrence, but it may be the last one I ever perform. Thank you for listening to this chapter of Fun Facts and Psychic Possession Attacks. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast, give it a like on YouTube, or share with someone else who you think might also enjoy. You can stay up to date with FF&PPA by following us on social media. That will be D2 Stories on just about any of the major platforms. Thanks again for listening, and I hope to have you listen again next week.